All right, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome everybody to our workshop on Monday, May 6th. Our first item on the agenda is the Regional Hazardous Materials Agreement, and I'll turn it over to the Chief.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor, Mayor, members of council, John Kipp, Chief of the Fire Department. I'd like to thank you this morning for giving me 4 hours to talk about nothing but hazmat. Actually, I got 10 minutes, so I'm really wanting to convey to you the essence of the agreement, a little bit about how it works. There are some more things in your packet that are not in the presentation. Your presentation has, or your packet has the PowerPoint. It has a map of the hazardous materials teams in the state, so you have a visual of what that looks like. It has a question and answer sheet that we being Polk County and Des Moines Hazmat, put together for a conversation we had last year about the hazmat agreement. The regular font or answers that I provided, and the italicized font is what Polk County put together for answers. There's a billing summary for the entire history of the hazmat agreement that we've had. It does understate the responses. It'll list somewhere in the 20s to 30s for responses per year, but we use hazmat for other things than that specific agreement. So last year we went out 74 times, where in the agreement it looks like about 25 times per the agreement. And there's a copy of Iowa Code Chapter 12, so you see the Homeland Security and the specialty teams language that's applicable. We've had now for 25 years a 2080 agreement between the City of Des Moines and 6 other participating counties for hazardous materials response. The other counties are Boone, Dallas, Polk, Madison, Marshall, Story, and Warren. And it's important, I often get questions about, did we provide mutual aid or something else? And there is a difference between an agreement like this and mutual aid. In mutual aid, I have a fire engine, you have a fire engine. If one of us gets thin on our response, we can call the other for assistance. We can mutually aid. There's a reciprocal nature to that relationship. In a 2080 agreement, there's a financial contract there. It's paying for service. I have a hazmat team, you don't have a hazmat team. So you provide compensation to the City of Des Moines as a part of that agreement, and we provide you with hazardous materials response. There is a difference between the local or the regional agreements and the state teams. There's about, I believe there's 20 hazardous materials teams or functions throughout the state. Ours would be one of them. Within our districts, Ames Fire Department also has a hazardous materials team. Those are not the same as the state teams. Homeland Security has several kinds of teams: the weapons of mass destruction hazmat, the bomb team, incident management teams, and they are not. They don't replace each other, and they weren't contemplated to do so. If you want the state hazmat team, that occurs through an action by the governor or the director of Homeland Security for a state level interest that provides compensation for liability coverage, reimbursement, things like that. And so they're not the same. We are members of a state team. I've talked with some of you about, there was a time last year when we were deployed up to Fort Dodge for a state level interest. That wasn't a part of our local agreement. That was us acting as a function of the state for a state level interest. That's often confused, and those two things are separate. How much does hazmat cost? The City of Des Moines, with the personnel costs, is about $5.8 million a year. And you'll notice that we pay a higher percentage of the hazmat cost than the percentage of the calls. And that's because we get more out of, we have those personnel all the time. They provide, they're the same firefighters that provide EMS service and fire suppression and building inspections and things like that. Polk County has paid around $250,000 for the last over 10 years. That's 4% of the total cost, or 10% of the calls. The other counties combined, the other 6 counties, pay $113,000, or about 2% of the cost for about 5% of those calls. Again, they're essentially paying us a retainer for response. If you were to put together a dedicated team that did nothing but hazmat, was available 24/7, that would cost you about $1.6 million a year, and it wouldn't get you very much. It would get you the response team and someone to run the program, and that's it. No equipment, no training. Obviously, for the city of Des Moines, that would be insufficient for our needs. For all of the communities that we work with, that would be way too expensive for them to put out that much money to have a team that did nothing but this. I think the arrangement that we have is pretty cost effective, and it's kind of the model. I've lined these three things up because really the core of our program is the City of Des Moines and Des Moines Fire Hazmat, the relationship we have with Polk County and Polk County Emergency Management. And when you think of hazmat and the agreement and you want to explain it to other people, think in these terms. You know, we're the team, we're the responders. Polk County directly pays for our hazardous materials captain, who does nothing else other than hazmat. Polk County really is, they're the collaborator. We do a lot of training coordination. They help with cost recovery, grant consultation, grant management, either with us directly or with some of the specialty teams. And that can also be thought of as response, training consultation, and cost recovery. So those are just themes for you to reflect back on.
Is that, they pay for the captain out of the 255?
Out of the 255 is the captain, some commodities, some contractual items, and part of the hazmat assignment pay that Des Moines fire personnel get are out of that 255. The team itself, there's 45 certified technicians. They operate out of two fire stations, the downtown fire station at 1330 Mulberry and Station 3 at Easton and Hubble. Over 20 of our hazmat technicians are the specialist level. You can think of it as all members of the fire service achieve an awareness level of hazmat. Des Moines Fire requires an operations level, which is the next higher level. The technician level, those responders in suits, is the next level. And then the specialist is the level above that. And you really get into rail cars, nuclear, chemical, biological, other things like that. And like I said before, our personnel also provide EMS, they inspect our businesses, they provide public education. I think the real value in hazmat, obviously the preparation and handling of emergencies is the core of protecting people, but we don't bill directly. Everyone who is paid in receives service, so I like to tell people about the non-billed services. The training of all of our partners, we work with all of the counties to provide training directly to those people. We're available 24/7, and by that I mean if you are in Kelly, Iowa, at 1 o'clock in the morning, you can get on the phone and talk to our hazmat captain, and he can walk you through your questions about a hazmat assignment where we don't need to deploy our apparatus up into Story County. It may not rise to that level, so we do a lot of consultation on the phone 24 hours a day for any of our partners. We do pre-planning for businesses, not just in Des Moines, not just in Polk County, but really kind of all over the place. In addition to places like Economy Forms in Helena, Magellan and Pleasant Hill, Airgas in Ankeny, General Mills in Avon Lake. We do a lot with businesses in preparation, and we think we're a great asset for the community in that capacity. We have a lot of partners. A short list would be Iowa Law Enforcement Academy, Des Moines Police Department, the U.S. Secret Service, the 71st Civil Support Team, Polk County Sheriff, the International Association of Firefighters and their hazmat and instruction groups are just some of our partners. Oh, I missed one. Another aspect of our hazmat team is what it provides to non-hazmat events. I'll use the example of a grain bin rescue up in Ankeny. which was not a hazmat event. But because of the type of rescue, it rose to the level of mutual aid. And so we went to Ankeny, and for the safety of our people, we need to do air monitoring and things like that, specialties that exist within the hazmat component. And so hazmat gets used for things other than just hazmat. It really is a value-added component of our responses. I think the regional agreements, and by regional I mean the local or multi-county, are the most cost-effective. They do give you the highest level of service. I'm not just talking when I say Des Moines is the best in the state. I say that because we are. Our people are that good. Others look to us for our expertise. So in our agreement, you do get the best service. We provide the right way of connecting from the local community to the county, to state, in the overall Homeland Security structure, partnership, and collaboration. And I do think that our expertise is a value-added asset to this community. We do provide lead instruction nationally. In the last year, I think we've led hazmat instruction courses in Michigan and in New Jersey and some other places. But we also do a lot of that local collaboration. Do you have any questions or comments for me?
Anybody have anything?
I do have a question. On the second slide, Chief, there is a right here. You don't give the total number of calls. So if 5% are in the, I assume if we're not counting unincorporated Polk or the city, we're talking about suburban cities and the other?
The 5% number are for the other 6 counties.
Okay.
So the 85% are within the city of Des Moines. The 10% are in Polk County, non-city of Des Moines.
But could be in unincorporated or
Yes.
other jurisdictions.
Yep.
So what 10% is of how many total calls?
Well, in the last page of your packet, in the billing summary, that will list in the last 5 years in the neighborhood of 25 to 35 or 40 calls per year.
I'm sorry.
And it's of those numbers that I'm referring to.
Okay.
I'm not going to make up the number. I'm going to guess 2012 was about 27.
Correct.
Okay, so in 2012 there was 27 responses as a matter of this agreement. In the city of Des Moines, there were 74 responses. We keep those separate, so when people say, "What exactly are we paying for?" and we can say we're paying out of that 27.
So has there been a significant change in how you identify incidents? Because if you look back in early 2000, the numbers are quite a bit higher.
There really has. In the late 90s or around 2000, we were sending the full response to literally everything. We've learned more. We've done more consultation over the phone. We've done more training with other people to try to not create that response. What's necessary for the call is what's necessary for the call. You have to send the whole Army to inspect the perimeter.
Okay.
John, Chief, is the number 27 for 2012 the number that are going into either Polk or others, or is that total?
Total.
Okay.
All right, anybody have anything else? We've got another piece of security coming up. And I know John will be available if we have questions moving forward. I'll now bring up Chief Bradshaw to speak about Homeland Security, and it's sort of an overview of our Homeland Security agreement, and which provides our high level of Homeland Security into our metro area cities. Chief?
Morning, Mayor. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Judy Bradshaw, Chief of Police. Waiting for the... First of all, I appreciate the opportunity this morning to just talk a little bit about law enforcement's, really our obligation and our responsibility to develop what we call an all hazards approach. After 9/11, there was quite a chunk of federal dollars that was funneled through the state to really be committed towards terrorism. Our initial Homeland Security agreement actually started right after 9/11, and we began to gear up. When you look at why do you have a Homeland Security agreement, I think the pictures in this slide tell it all. Our agreement really is tailored on an all hazards kind of approach. If you look on the federal or the state level, there really is an inability, and that's been acknowledged by the federal officials and by the state officials, but there's really an inability for them to provide adequate first responder capabilities in all communities. There's really an inability for all communities, whether it's a suburb or just the city of Des Moines standing alone, to build and maintain these kinds of capabilities. Right after 9/11, our Homeland Security and Emergency Management formed at the state level. Basically, the concept that the federal government put into place and was funding was that each state would begin to form specialty team task forces. And we did that in the state of Iowa. This council has approved quite a bit of, well, you see the blue letters and the council action for the purchase of bomb equipment, the purchase of robots, the purchase of rifles and weapons of mass destruction. Quite a bit of equipment was originally purchased after 9/11. Those federal dollars have slowly diminished over time. These specialty teams are in place today. The state specialty SWAT and bomb teams were formed and funded to provide service for the entire state of Iowa. And really their intention is to respond to catastrophic kinds of events, and they can only be accessed and utilized by the governor's declaration of an emergency. So to give you an example of when one of these teams has been activated, the Parkersburg tornado is an example. We sent folks, because we have personnel committed to these teams, and we sent them up to Parkersburg. In fact, Major Dana Wingert, who's here today and oversees my patrol operations, he flew up there along with several others, and they helped manage the command post up there in Parkersburg. Also, during the floods of '08 and 2010, the governor activated these teams all across the state of Iowa. And we sent personnel to assist these communities that were experiencing flooding. So what's changed since 2007? Well, a lot of the funding has been diminished at the federal level. The number of the SWAT teams for the state task force has been reduced by one team. So these teams still exist for these kinds of, emergencies and disasters, but the money and the funding is not as great as it was after 9/11. The strategy also on a federal and a state level has shifted from just simply considering terrorist acts to what we call an all hazards approach. If you look at the present funding, in 2004, again, several years after the commitment to 9/11, for all the SWAT and the bomb, the commitment was about $2 million. That commitment today is down and been diminished to about $298,000.
And those are federal funds?
Yes, that have been channeled through the state.
Okay.
Why that's important is because the city, our city, and the suburbs, through this Homeland Security agreement, we have had to make up the difference. What hasn't changed? As you can see from this slide, you have, again, I referred to the Parkersburg tornado. We've got flooding. We get significant campaign and dignitary visits. On the right is President Obama on the last night of his campaign. And then the most recent, you have the Boston Marathon bombings there pictured. So, the world hasn't changed. It's not It's not getting any easier for public safety and for those of us that respond to an all hazards approach. You know, this team approach in our Homeland Security agreement is now more important than ever before. The Chapter 28E agreement, these are the cities, these are the communities originally in 2007 that entered into the agreement. We've included some of those that originally said that they would enter into the agreement, such as Dallas County, and failed to pay, and then some that never signed into the agreement.
And Judy, the length of the 28E is for?
Originally, the agreement was for 3 years that started in 2007. And then at the end of that 3-year time period, that was actually initiated and put into place by my predecessor. When renewal time came up in 2010, I believe it was, City Manager Clark and I went around to the various city councils and the city managers. Some renewed for, we had asked for a 5-year renewal. Just so we wouldn't have to continue to go back and that we could budget accordingly, you know, going forward. But a lot of the communities wanted to do the 3-year and then some wanted to do the 1 year. So it varies now. Some communities are still on an annual renewal basis, and there's some of those communities that were listed that continue with that 3-year commitment.
Okay.
Some of the services that we provide that are separate from these state specialty teams that I alluded to that are activated by the governor during significant disasters. Disasters are the 20 agreement. You see them out there, the Metro Star, the TAC unit. These folks are trained in the weapons of mass destruction, in being able to respond to what we call CBURN. That's the acronym for the chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, and explosive environments. They work hand in hand with our hazmat. When hazmat gets called out to a particular environment, to a scene, you have members from our Metro Star and our bomb squad that are also accompanying them. Bomb squad, they are more important than ever before. We are in not just our community, but after the Boston Marathon incident, we were out in Urbandale. Someone had found a backpack along the bike trail. It looked suspicious. We were out in West Des Moines on a munitions call. You know, that's our bomb squad that's out there responding and trying to mitigate the circumstances out there. Also, though, we offer our intelligence unit, which is funded, and the funding is being diminished through grants, but we have two planners and intelligence planners that collect all kinds of information, and they are the behind the scenes kinds of folks that, for instance, and I can talk about it now because it's over, but during the Drake relays, we were monitoring Facebook, and we found that there was a man that lived in Waukee that thought that it would be funny to leave a backpack somewhere near the start line of the Drake relays. And he was talking about this openly. We, through our fusion and our intel collection, we paid a visit to him at his home and his office. So, and we also criminally trespassed him, which means if he were to show up anywhere in the Drake area, he was going to be arrested. So our intelligence isn't perfect, you know, the information that we gather and collect, but it's pretty darn good. We also offer through our identification section, or what folks know as CSI. You know, it is an art to collect this kind of evidence at a crime scene. And so we have some of our technicians that we have taken the time to train in collecting and preserving evidence that is located in hazardous environments. And then we've gone beyond the original agreement in 2007. Some of the additional services that we provide today, when you look at an all hazards approach, it's not just It's not just a Metro Star team and everything else that you saw there for the terrorism side of it. But we can respond to barricaded, individuals. We just were in operation a couple weeks ago out on Wright Street when a man up there shot at police officers. We had our crisis negotiators out there at the scene. We were out at the Drake Relays, which was very successful. You're going to see us roll out here this month, the Seniors Tour, and RAGBRAI coming up. And so we've got some really significant special events in the city that draw in folks from all these communities, folks from West Des Moines and Urbandale and Clive and all across the state that come to the events that are held in Des Moines. And because of the funding for this agreement, we all benefit and we all can create a safe environment. The dignitary protection support, before we know it, it's going to be election time and campaign season again. We're out at Living History Farms when the president or one of the dignitaries is out there visiting. We go out there with our bomb dogs and our SWAT teams. We're also out there at the, downtown at Wells Fargo, but we're out in West Des Moines at their Hy-Vee facilities. Wells Fargo, this isn't just a Des Moines kind of agreement and an initiative. It really is a metro-wide response. We also offer for those communities that participate, obviously our dive team. We were out in Grimes when I think it was about 3 weeks ago, there was a man in a car it was a car that we pulled out of the lake out there, and there was a man inside. We're all over the metro area, and we share this resource, although the dive team was not one of the original assets that was named in the original 2080 agreement.
Chief, so when you're out at all of these different events and you take the different teams, how do they interact with the other police departments, or do the other police departments actually have people assigned to these teams? The original jurisdiction, they're in charge of that scene. And they have contacted our department and asked for access to, if it's the bomb squad or the dive team. And our folks literally are assigned to their commanders. So, they still have control and command over their particular incident. They just work with our command staff and with our resources to resolve the situation. But on any of these teams, are there other police officers from other communities that are part of the 28E that are permanent members of those teams?
Yes, there are. We have, I think it's 3 from Polk County. We've got 1 from Indianola, 1 from Windsor Heights. We'd welcome any of the communities if they wanted to add a resource or 2 to our Metro Star team. We would welcome that.
So, like West Des Moines, Urbandale, Clive, Johnston, Ankeny, they don't have anybody participating at the moment?
They don't, Mayor. However, they do pay in. I will note that the suburbs, West Des Moines, Clive, and Urbandale, do have what they call a CERT team. It is a tactical group of officers that they use for responding to barricaded individuals and homes. So they have that capability within their western suburbs. Although if they called us, we'd, for a long-standing barricaded response, such as the man that we just had in Des Moines, when that reaches over several days, that taxes your resources. So if they were to contact us on something that was going to last over a period of time, we would certainly assist them with that. This is a continuation of the team approach. Probably the one bullet to note here is our close relationship with Polk County Emergency Management, certainly, Polk County Sheriff's Office, the Des Moines Fire Department, our hazmat teams, and then the other federal assets that are housed here in the metro area.
Again, the all hazards team approach, it really is an integrated specialty team, fully equipped, trained, and familiar with the communities in the metro area. Our folks are not going to need to look at a map to figure out how to get out to Jordan Creek, or to go to, Drake, or to East High School. They've trained out there, they are familiar with these areas, and that is really, one of the great benefits for all of the participants, in that these are local folks, these are officers that have trained with one another, they've trained with the equipment, they have keys to where they need to get into. All this seems not, like it may not be a big deal until you're under an emergency situation. You just can't wait for the governor to activate specialty teams when you have first responders here. And not everything is going to qualify for the governor to activate one of these specialty teams. So these capabilities just make sense. They're practical for a community our size. I know the metro area, we host about 150 to 160 special events a year. It just makes sense. And I think that law enforcement has an obligation and a responsibility to develop these kinds of capabilities for their communities. Just to give you a sense, since 2007, we've had about 93 responses outside of the metro area. And that's a whole host. We didn't divide those out. That's from bomb to dive to all kinds of various responses and requests from the suburbs into their communities. The original funding in 2007 that was developed and put into place by my predecessor, Des Moines' commitment would be about $1 million. We do exceed this each year. I know last year we exceeded it by about $100,000, but we have gone up to, that has varied depending upon the number of call-outs each year. Again, it lists the participating communities that also contribute. Combined, it's about the 379,000. Polk County contributes at 113. These numbers have not changed. And I can't tell you what the original formula was because I wasn't involved in that, but I do know that the way that they determined what a community would participate was through the census and the population. And all of us have grown here in the metro and in the suburbs, and we have not recalculated that from the original agreement. There has been some discussion that potentially Urbandale, West Des Moines, and Clive are considering withdrawing from the agreement, and so we wanted to provide you with the impact of what that would be on a city-by-city basis. I know we do have the city manager and the police and fire chief here from West Des Moines, and I appreciate them being here this morning.
Chief,
And Clive, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Chief, on the 160,000 that were the deficit, how is that covered then?
We're going to have to sit down and have a discussion about that.
Mrs. Hensley, Councilmember, is covered by your general fund. You don't have any choice but to pick it up.
Yeah.
Allocations in your budget to this function.
Okay, so going back
Can we go ahead and finish the presentation, please?
Yes, sir. Just sort of a summary. Again, the federal funding, the dollars have diminished over time. Those are going to continue to diminish. We haven't seen Congress approve a budget. Not sure if they're going to do that this year or not. So we can't really rely on the Homeland Security grants from the federal or the state government. We have taken the right approach, an all hazards approach to this team. These assets, though, they come at a cost to all the communities who participate and who benefit from these local capabilities. And then those communities, if they do opt out of the 2080 agreement, they will have to rely solely on the state for their responses. And as we know, the state has admittedly indicated that they don't have the resources to be as timely. And that's why back in '07, these kinds of capabilities were put into place for our community.
All right, Ms. Hensley, another question?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, going back to the 28E agreements, and you said that you had some, Chief, on annual versus 3 years. So are we saying that the Urbandale, West Des Moines, Clive all came up at the same time? Were they on an annual or were they on a 3-year?
You know, I'm not sure if they're on an annual basis. I do believe that Urbandale, they look at their budgets, they consider their budgets obviously on a 1 year. I know they are in discussions now, West Des Moines is as well, and I'm not sure where Clive is.
I guess the comment I would make, just going back to the MAC meetings that we had where we had significant discussions on this, we spent a great deal of time coming up with a formula that was equitable, and obviously if Des Moines is carrying the lion's share of this, it's gotten out of balance. And we talked about whether it would be on a per capita or assessed value.
Right.
And we decided to go the per capita rate. So I would just ask the city manager, that's something that we would need to look at, you know, the formula and make a revision to that. And, but I guess the other comment would be if you have communities that are withdrawing, the void that leaves and how would that be covered?
Right.
Any other questions? Ellie, Bob, anybody? I'm going to ask the city manager has a couple of comments. I'd like to make a quick comment, in Chief, both chiefs actually, I appreciate your presentations this morning. You know, it's interesting, and one of the revealing issues that that we're facing is on your page 3 of your presentation, which is the reduction in funding that goes from $2 million to $298,000. And I served on a national preparedness task force, and we had 27 federal agencies sitting around the table talking about these kinds of issues and how we plan. And I know that I've talked to both chiefs about this. We've talked to our Polk County emergency response group. And it's amazing that as the risks seem to be proliferating and become more, as we see in Boston, we see in some other places, the kind of things that we have to have, that it's interesting that at the federal level, they seem to respond really well when there's a disaster, but they're not, they want to cut the funding back to prepare us to do it. And the preparedness is to, you know, look at all of our situations, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think we've identified like 27 different possible problems that could happen around here and plans around each and every one of those, and how we would respond to all of our area and all of our cities. And knowing now that our funding to do this work and to prepare our preparedness team is reduced, and then to look at the other issues, as we look at it when an incident occurs, you know, how do we respond, how do we mitigate it, and then how do we recover from it? And it all takes money to do that, and we have to do it at a local level because, as the chief pointed out, it response, whether it's in Urbandale or Clive or West Des Moines or any of the areas around here, we've all got to, you know, respond immediately because generally the governor and the state is not there for at least 24 hours and sometimes 48, 72, 96 hours. And so we're the teams that are on the ground. We're the ones that are all working together to try to make some things happen. And without all of us working together, I don't think we're going to be quite as effective as we would otherwise. And knowing that if we have the worst disaster and the governor declares it, and then we get a presidential declaration in the case of some of our flood issues, then we get some response somewhere down the road. And oh, by the way, there's some other rules out there that say that we have to get preliminary approval before we can get reimbursed to do some action. Well, in the middle of an incident, we're going to go ahead and do stuff. We've got to save lives. We've got to save property. We've got to protect property. And it's all of us working together that's going to make that happen. And if we can mitigate it and tap down all the residual that can happen in the middle of an event and make it less, and the disaster reduced in terms of cost, it's a huge, huge help to all of us and to our citizens, most importantly. Mr. Manager, why don't you go ahead and continue?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, one of the things that the mayor and council have asked me to do ever since I've been city manager is to work on shared services. It's a way to reduce our costs going forward. It's hard for me to think about a shared service that provides more benefit on a metro basis and reduces cost and shares that cost burden just a little bit more effectively than our two services that we're talking about this morning, Homeland Security and Hazard Material Agreement. These two agreements together provide over $600,000 a year to the city. Now that offsets a little bit the much larger costs that we incur in providing these services, but it is a significant income that comes back to us. It is clearly something, in my view, that we ought to try to continue. Now, I would say, and I do want to recognize Greg Sparks, City Manager from West Des Moines, and Denny Henderson from Clive. Thank you very much for being here. Now you have your public safety people, too. And I suppose if I were in their position, I would be looking at this and saying, gee, is this really necessary? Am I really getting bang for my buck? And I understand that question. I think the answer, from my perspective, is a resounding yes. This is a kind of an insurance service. You don't really need it until you need it, but when you need it, you really do. So there might be periods of time when you don't call for this service, but when you need it, it's got to be there and it's got to be delivered in a very good way. I've been contacted by the city managers in those three cities that were mentioned, Clive, West Des Moines, and Urbandale, to sit down with their chief and our chiefs and talk about these agreements. We'll be happy to do that and have that discussion. But it's my hope at the end of the day that these agreements continue to be existent. I think they are really a great example of shared services that reduce our costs going forward. It is clearly something to fight for. And frankly, this argument about collaboration of services and shared services is one that you hear over and over again from all quarters as ways that government ought to pursue keeping our costs low. So I very much appreciate these presentations. Both chiefs did an excellent job of laying out these programs. They are really a testament to the expertise that we have within City Hall here. And they are the kind of services that, frankly, not every city is going to be able to duplicate. You simply can't afford, if you're a smaller community, to have these services. It makes no sense to have multiple sources of this service being provided. It does make sense to have one source, in this case Des Moines, that provides the services, and others can help offset those costs through shared agreements. So I hope that we're able to continue these. I think they're wonderful agreements. I think we've done a great job in providing the services, and our door will remain open to meeting with the folks in the suburbs to talk about any issues that they may have, but I hope at the end of the day we're able to continue the agreements.
Anybody anything? Well done. Okay. Let's move on now. We've got a presentation from Drake University Law School on sustainability in the law, and look forward to that. This is our, is this our second or third?
Third year. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, Laura Graham, City Manager's Office. I just want to give a quick introduction here. As Mayor County mentioned, this is our third year working in partnership with Drake Law, and I just want to make sure, thanks. I just wanted to make sure that we had a moment here to be brief. First and foremost, one of the things that we charged Drake University, the law school, to do this year was to take a look at the STAR framework that we brought forward to each of you in December. So I just wanted to give you a quick look at the presentations that you'll hear today and how they interact with the STAR framework in terms of the objectives that we'll be looking at today. So you'll see them under the built environment, climate and energy, health and safety, and natural systems. The other thing I wanted to mention, just taking a look at the time we have here this morning, I'll be brief. Each of these students has worked really hard over the last semester to put forward some pretty solid recommendations, and I'm excited for you to hear them today. I would ask that maybe we hold questions for each of the presentations until all four of them are complete, That way, if we do have questions, we can talk about them at that point. I'd also like to introduce Jonathan Rosenblum. He is the professor of this particular class and has been a really great partner working with the City of Des Moines as it relates to STAR and other sustainability measures. So thank you.
Good morning, Mayor.
And Jonathan, I also must apologize to you. I had promised to get you some of the protocol information around the Kyoto and post-Kyoto. It has not come to me yet, so I have nothing to give to you. But
I hear that
hopefully,
excuse a lot from students, by the way.
yeah, all right.
We'll come back to that. That project is ongoing anyways. But good morning, Mayor, council members, City Attorney. It's great to see you all, and it's wonderful to be here and to introduce 4 Drake University Law School student projects. These are relevant to sustainability. As you may recall, this project is something that has been in the works for about 3 years. It's a collaboration between the Greater Des Moines Partnership, Drake Law School, and the city. And I'm particularly pleased with this year's projects as the students have worked very closely with the city manager's office, and particularly its sustainability team and the members there, and Laura Graham. In addition, as Laura mentioned, we have focused heavily this year on trying to look at areas that are relevant to the STAR Community Index, and the rating system, as well as the Tomorrow Plan. In the reports that you hopefully have, and if you don't have them, please let me know. I will get that to you. You'll see a more detailed analysis, not only of the plans, but also how they are relevant to STAR and the Tomorrow Plan. In addition, in 3 of those, you'll find proposed amendments. And so we hope that you enjoy this today, you find it interesting and insightful and helpful, as well as you take these up in a very serious manner. And I encourage you to lean on me in any way you feel you'd like to push these forward. So again, I do want to thank you, as this is a wonderful opportunity and really a highlight of the class for the students and myself. And so with that, I'll turn it over and kick it off with the first group, Infill.
See, we're going to be brief, I promise. All right, Mayor and City Council, my name is Kelly Russell, and this is Kelsey Knight, and we're going to briefly outline our proposal for sustainable infill and redevelopment. In front of you, you will see the roadmap of what we will be presenting today. We're going to really kind of discuss some of the goals and the issue itself, as well as the current law at both the state and the city level, and then all of the considerations that we put into our proposal and why they are important. And then we will end with a charge to the city, so what we would ask of you if this proposal is adopted. As we go through this presentation, I encourage you to consider the picture in front of you. This was taken in Council Bluffs, Iowa, an abandoned railroad area. And then after, this is a new apartment complex for artists in a burgeoning art district. So this is an example of infill in play.
Here you can see we have literally driven around Des Moines, just taken some pictures of places we could see this being implemented. This is by no means comprehensive, just some examples of where we think this might fit. The broad overarching goal that we set out with was to promote sustainable infill development within the city. This led to some more smaller, narrower goals of ridding the cities of abandoned and unsafe structures, providing growth with increased tax revenue within the city, and creating a more vibrant and holistic community.
So one of the major things to identify to begin with is what really is infill when we're talking about that. Infill is defined as the development of vacant, abandoned, or blighted space in an area which is already surrounded by an established community. So what we're really looking at are these vacant lots that when you drive around town, you may see a dilapidated building or just overgrown parking lot, anything along those lines. This is an important issue for all of us to address because these properties do have a value, an impact on the value of the properties around them. Most of them are tax delinquent, so you're not receiving any revenue from them, but it's also decreasing the property values around them. So as you see, this would increase the property values. It would also deter crime because this is where a lot of the crime instances take place, are these abandoned areas. And it would also encourage development within the city center. We want people to build in Des Moines instead of maybe going out into the far suburbs and taking up some of that agricultural land.
Starting with the current structure of the law in Des Moines, there's currently an urban revitalization plan that was just supplemented in 2011. It provides some tax incentives for redevelopment within the Des Moines area, and it also provides for some sustainable building practices that are a little bit lacking. There's also commercial tax abatements, which also have the same sustainability standards for development.
At the state level, we have a couple of chapters of the code that are new as of last summer. There is a section designating an urban renewal area process, which is basically a blueprint for what a city would do if they want to identify and redevelop an area. There are tax incentives incorporated into that plan, so there are abatements for development, and then those abatements actually increase if you develop in a sustainable manner. So maybe you receive LEED certification or other green standards as defined by the administrative code. And lastly, there's also a program through the Department of Natural Resources funded by the EPA, which goes into areas that have perceived environmental issues, so maybe an abandoned gas station or dry cleaners, and they'll actually go in and clean up the area using federal money so that it is shovel ready for developers.
As we were making our proposal, we went through a series of considerations. The first one being establishing an identification and prioritization process. This would include making a database of all the vacant properties that you would want to see redeveloped, the existing conditions of the site, and perhaps what you would want it to be used for, whether that's commercial or a community garden. The identification process should also include looking into creating a Des Moines land bank and land banking authority.
The second consideration we looked at was incentivization. So how do we get developers to actually look at some of these abandoned properties and put something on them? Like I mentioned prior, the DNR Brownfields program would enable developers to go into an area that's been abandoned maybe for environmental reasons, and it removes the liability because they actually take head of all of the cleanup that is required. Also, we've seen incentivization programs in cities around the nation. One example would be Portland for design standards that kind of, like I mentioned, give those tax abatements if they do development in a sustainable manner.
Third consideration we had was enforcement. Basically, we want to ensure that the program isn't abused and that it's doing what it actually is designated to do. The Iowa Code designates 30 months for completion of redevelopment projects, which we think would be a good place to start, just to make sure that properties aren't in idle hands and don't stay in idle hands.
And our last consideration was tracking and measuring. So once this program is in place, how do we make sure that it's being utilized to its full advantage? And like Kelsey mentioned, that properties aren't just sitting vacant. So we would look at sort of metrics like the crime incidences on these areas. Are there an increase in permits for these development, whether greenfield or brownfield? And then also looking at the tax revenues that the city would be generating from these properties that have now been redeveloped from a delinquent state.
Okay, well, we had one more slide. It was our charge to the city. Basically, if you were to adopt a program like this, our charge to you would be to make the urban revitalization plan more complete. And that includes creating the identification process, a database, maybe a land bank and land banking authority for the city of Des Moines, and to encourage, or maybe in some cases even mandate, more sustainable development practices, whether that's building or the materials that you use, things that we mentioned earlier, and to also apply this to the downtown overlay, which we didn't mention, but is not included in the urban revitalization plan because it is in a TIF district, but also encouraging sustainable development for that part of Des Moines as well.
I guess we're leaving questions.
Anybody have any quick questions for our
Excellent.
group here?
Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you very much.
So, Mayor,
Yes.
how would we embed those recommendations?
Well, I think what we need to do is probably pass them to the manager and to community development and P&Z and look at, because remember, we've been waiting for a zoning code update for a really long period of time, about 10 years.
We
And,
should have a 10-year birthday. It's about,
yeah, we should.
Was this before I was on?
what's that?
That was before I was on.
You
Exactly.
got elected with a promise to get it done with.
That's exactly right. Our next team.
Good morning. I apologize, I'm losing my voice just a smidge, so have to kind of bear with me. My name's Elizabeth and this is Megan. We're going to talk about residential water quality, specifically outside the home, so stormwater. We know that water quality is an issue. There's a number of Iowa itself has had a record number of impaired waterways. This not only affects how those waters can be used, but it reflects on the city and the state itself. So it'll impact not only the people that we currently have in the city, but who we attract both residentially as well as commercially. Currently, there's a lot of regulation over industrial water usage, and there's a lot of attention that goes into agricultural water, stormwater. We felt that left kind of a geographical demographic that was relatively untouched, which would be the residential neighborhoods. Throughout this proposal, we'd kind of like you to picture yourself on a street corner similar to this in residential Des Moines, and kind of keep that in mind as we move through this proposal and the changes we would like to see.
As Elizabeth mentioned, we're working on a residential street corner, so when the rain comes down, it's really going to fall on the houses and follow impervious surfaces to the stormwater system. So our goal is overarching is to create cleaner waterways, but in doing this we want to educate the public about the water quality issues as well as how the water really flows, and then also encourage more natural filtration, so instead of going through the stormwater system to filter on site through grasses or rain gardens, things like that. This works with the STAR plan. They have a component of creating an educational campaign about water quality that would be hit in our proposal, as well as the Tomorrow plan. One of the goals is replacing built systems with natural systems. This would work towards that and filtering the water on site instead of through the stormwater system.
So get to the kind of the meat and potatoes of this presentation. The first part of the proposal is to set up a stormwater sustainability committee, and this really gives the proposal its teeth. This would constitute membership or a designee from the city manager's office, the stormwater utility, as well as the economic development authority. We chose those because we wanted to make sure that there was a balance between both economic as well as sustainable and environmental interest, and so everyone was kind of brought to the table. This committee would have a number of enumerated duties, and they're outlined in our proposal, so I'll kind of go over a couple of the major ones. They would put together this audit structure. And so what this would constitute is a process of going out and evaluating the properties and determining how, quote, stormwater sustainable they are. They would put together how that process goes about. They would also be in charge of determining what would be best management practices. So what is currently feasible based on our geographics? Can a certain type of grass be implemented that would absorb water better? Would it be feasible to put in a green roof? Can you put in a rain barrel? What is feasible based on the property? Additionally, they would need to review this every 5 years to make sure we're staying up on current technology and different characteristics, as well as come up and give a report like we are and make sure that they're held accountable for the process. The second kind of tier of this would be the index itself, and so this is where you kind of get your grade. This is where properties would get their classification. So we kind of break this down into 4 steps. The index would go, you would have someone that would go out and look at the property, and then secondly they kind of take an inventory of the characteristics of that property and then compare it to what's been determined as what would be feasible best management practices. And then based on that comparison, do kind of a ratio. And that's where you get your grade. And we would like it to be some type of simple classification like your Class A, Class B, Class C, something simple. Stormwater sustainable. We'd also like that to be published on an individual's water bill so that that's readily available to not only the current property owner, but also someone that would be investing in that property, or as it goes on the market, that's something that can be a classification. Additionally, like looking forward with this, we'd like this to be able to use as a benchmark. So communities or even the city itself can say, we would like all of our properties within the state or within the city of Des Moines to be Class B stormwater sustainable. And so that gives us a classification or kind of a benchmark to meet, or even individual communities to be able to say within their covenant agreement in a neighborhood, all of the properties in this particular block are Class XYZ stormwater sustainable.
So Elizabeth has mentioned several times the audit. This is loosely structured how local energy companies do an audit, except for we would be focusing on outside of the building. So what would happen is there are 4 triggers that are mentioned within our proposal, and for time's sake, I won't go through those. But once those are triggered, an inspector from the utility would come out to the property. The committee would put together a property assessment tool that the inspector would use. A lot of the examples we've seen include the square footage of the property, the square footage of the pervious and impervious surface, the location and number of downspouts, and then also just a site plan. And this really helps determine what the runoff of the resident actually is, as well as where they could implement these best management practices. They would generally then talk with the resident. The utility has a wealth of knowledge about best management practices, and this would be a great way for the inspector to really talk with the resident and give them input on what they could do, and also educate them, as well as lead them to resources for putting in best management practices. And then they could take this information back to their office and really do a printout and send that to the resident along with their rating grade. The big question we've gotten all semester has been, how much would this cost? There would be upfront costs to this as setting up the committee, the index, and the audit itself. However, there are a lot of benefits to the program. The residents themselves would be drawing less water, so they'd be saving themselves money, as well as there'd be less water going into the system, so that would save the city some money. It would also help increase the longevity of the current system we have in place, or any new system that's put in place. It would increase the longevity of that. So that would be a benefit to the city. With that, we hope that our proposal would create cleaner waterways and really work towards a goal of educating the populace so they are aware of the water quality in Des Moines and can make educated decisions.
Any questions, anybody? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. We are the Food Access and Nutrition Group. I'm Jake, this is Adam and Meredith, and today we're going to speak briefly to you about the issue of low-income individuals' lack of access to fresh and healthy food in Des Moines and the surrounding Polk County area. Now, I'm going to speak briefly about the problems that arise with this issue. Adam's going to walk you through our proposal, and Meredith's going to speak briefly about the impacts that we hope this proposal will have. Now, any quick glance across the news site today will show that America is fighting a war on obesity, and unfortunately, Iowa, the state of Iowa, Polk County, and Des Moines in particular aren't immune from this problem. And studies have shown that if you are of a lower income family or a lower income individual, you're more likely to be affected by this issue. For example, recently Iowa State released a study which explains that if you are low income and living in the Des Moines metropolitan area, you're more likely than the rest of the population to be suffering from obesity. Additionally, 1 in 7 children in Polk County is currently considered obese. And if these children are growing up in a lower income household, they are particularly susceptible to growing into poor nutrition related diseases such as diabetes or heart disease or just general problems with obesity. So what these studies are showing is that we are facing a problem now, and it's likely going to get worse in the future as future generations are growing into these sort of poor nutritional habits. So to come up with a solution, we took a look at the vibrant local Des Moines farmers market scene and developed a program which we hope will increase SNAP, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance, formerly known as the Food Stamp Benefit Program, at the farmers market, which Adam will walk you through right now.
Yeah, our program is called the Just Fresh program, and we have modeled this program after doing research across the country of many farmers markets that have implemented this type of incentive program specifically for SNAP benefit users from places all over the Midwest to the coast. Many cities and local farmers markets have implemented this program. We primarily have used the model that Portland, Oregon has used, and that's mainly for the organizational structure, which I'll cover here. That is because we feel that model could be the most efficient and effective in Des Moines, since we already have a large, vibrant farmers market in the downtown area. And the organizational structure that we are proposing would be that this would be housed under the Des Moines Partnership, and the Des Moines Partnership would act as the nonprofit entity that would manage this program and would collect private funds through businesses and charitable donations. They would then use that money to directly fund this program, which would be run by the downtown farmers market. The downtown farmers market would have a booth at the farmers market that would run this program. And in our first year, what we're looking for as a target would be between $20,000 and $15,000 to raise, and that would be for what we're calling a $5 match. So if somebody, a SNAP benefit user, was to come to the farmers market for a $5, they would have to at least spend $5, and anything after that, they would still just receive a $5 match. It's the incentive to hopefully get them there, and then that match is to be used at one of the pre-designated stalls for fresh fruits and fresh vegetables. Now, along with this aspect, we will also have an education and assessment aspect to the program, which will provide educational material for the people utilizing this program on how to cook and use these fresh fruits and vegetables, other places to access these resources in the community, and also more information about the farmers market in each stall, what they can utilize. The assessment aspect will keep track of the people utilizing the program. That way, in fundraising years going forward, we'll know how many people are utilizing the program, what aspects of our outreach is working, where are people finding out about this program, and then also any assessment we can figure out, how can we make this better? How can we get more people involved? And is this helping people in their lives, as far as, are they utilizing the farmers market? Are they spending more in the farmers market? And as we said, the reason we've chosen this organizational structure is basically one big aspect is the funding. Good news for you, we're not asking for any public money. So this would be all through charitable donations, which we feel in Des Moines would be very, with the insurance community and healthcare community, would be very possible and has been a successful model in other places. And we feel that this program would be very beneficial to getting more money in the local market, and increased spending at local level, and also multiple health benefits to those users. Yeah, we also have proposed some going, and those are in the packet, further some solutions for going forward, possibly what we could do depending on the funds raised and the assessment gathered, possible DART vouchers, year-round options, and partnering with local grocers and businesses in the winter months as well to possibly offer these solutions. So, and those are further detailed in the packet.
So lastly, are these types of programs effective in changing people's purchasing and eating habits? And the good news is that they're wildly successful. They've been implemented in over 30 states all over the country and have been met with roaring success in every single state. We focused on Michigan's program. It was a statewide program called Double Up Food Bucks, because we felt that it was a little more applicable to the conditions in Iowa and would be a little more relatable. In the Double Up Food Bucks program, they were successful in changing people's eating habits. They did a broad survey of all of the users and the vendors and also the market managers. And what they found was the health benefits that came from the program, the customers who use the program, the SNAP beneficiaries, over 80% of them were not only purchasing more fruits and vegetables, but they were also purchasing different types of fruits and vegetables. So the education part of our program, we feel is crucial to educating the SNAP beneficiaries on the different types of fruits and vegetables that they can purchase, and also just broadening their horizons, broadening their interests, and changing their food habits. And also the impact on the local economy that it has. It keeps the food local. By focusing on farmers markets, we're ensuring that the food that the fresh fruits and vegetables that they are eating is coming from Iowa. So we're lowering the food miles, which also has a direct impact on sustainability and lowering Des Moines' carbon footprint and Iowa's carbon footprint. And all of these are directly relatable to all of the goals, the mission statements, the overarching goals and specific goals within the STAR and Tomorrow plans, which we use as a framework for our entire program. So with that.
With that, we would just ask for your support for implementation of the program. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody have any questions?
I've got one. I'm just curious, during your research, did you find any information on the slow food movement?
No.
Thank you.
Morning, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. My name is Jacob Skolnick, and this is Derek Smith, and today we're going to talk to you about revitalizing Walnut Street. Now, a lot of current residents of Des Moines don't really know what Walnut Street used to be. This is sort of a generation behind us now, but there's something, it can be something very great again. It was a downtown hub for generations. That's actually an image of what it used to be decades ago. It actually has a lot of historical significance because back in the early 1900s, it was one of the first cities in the entire country, the first streets in the entire country to be fully lit with electric lights, and it's got a lot of national attention, a lot of industry attention, and really spurred a lot of downtown development by local business owners to electrify the entirety of downtown. Now, over the years, it's sort of lost some of its historical significance. Most people today just know it as the former transit hub for the Des Moines bus system, but it can be something really great again, and that's what we're here to talk to you about. So first of all, we're going to talk about the challenges facing Walnut Street. There's a lot of development that needs to go on before it can be a city hub again, but if you've seen any of the work done by the Downtown Partnership, the Downtown Community Alliance, they're really moving in a really exciting direction. And we're going to talk about our solution for developing Walnut Street, which we believe is an overlay district to sort of help spur development in the area. We're then going to talk about what the current laws in the Des Moines area are. There's some laws that are helpful in this area, but some things we think could be improved as well. We're also going to go over briefly what some other areas have done as far as overlay districts and to help spur development, and then we're going to go over our proposal in a little bit more detail. So the challenge of Walnut Street is to revitalize a downtown community, but creating sort of a distinct character. We don't want to create something that's the same as, say, Court Avenue, a lively nightlife area. We don't want to create an East Village with a lot of boutique shopping area. We really want to create something totally unique, a very family-friendly area, and a very exciting area, something that the city of Des Moines really doesn't have right now in the downtown core. There is some existing law that helps us out in this area. There's a restated urban revitalization plan, which sort of helps move us in the right direction here, and along with an existing downtown overlay district, which provides some usage restrictions and is really helpful, but we think needs to be improved a little bit as far as getting a development in this area that we want. And ultimately, the goal is to take the plans of the Downtown Community Alliance and the Greater Des Moines Partnership and back it up with force of law so that this is the direction that ends up going. So an overlay district, briefly, is a special zoning district that adds some new requirements without changing the area's general zoning area. This has been done in cities all over the country. The city of Des Moines does have a downtown overlay district, as I'm sure you're aware of. It allows you to maintain some local character, create some very unique aesthetic requirements, to sort of create a unique local feel, and it promotes use and development in line with what the community wants, and that's what we're trying to accomplish here. Now, there is some existing law. There's an existing overlay district passed in mid-2000, which provides some very general usage restrictions, which is helpful, but not quite to the extent that the area really needs. Streetlights, there's a section of Des Moines Code which says that the city can approve streetlights, but doesn't really say much about sustainability or other requirements. Bicycle lanes, same sort of thing. Planting, what we want to do in this area, we're going to talk about a little bit farther, but we want to go very local with that. And sidewalk cafes, in this particular area, we want to eliminate some of the red tape that businesses need to go through to be able to use their sidewalk to the fullest extent. And Derek's to go into that in a bit more detail.
Thank you. As Jake said, we took a look at some different overlay district examples from around the country, and in particular in Minnesota, we looked at some in Minneapolis and in St. Paul. In Minneapolis, there was a pedestrian-oriented overlay district that we found interesting, and in St. Paul, part of their White Bear Avenue overlay district had a requirement that 50% of plants and landscaped areas needed to be native species, and we took notice of that in developing our overlay district. So as Jake said, our proposal is to enhance the plans of the Walnut Street, for Walnut Street proposed by the Downtown Community Alliance, and our different aspects of our overlay district will meet goals of the STAR communities, Index and of the Tomorrow Plan, specifically of resource efficiency, reducing invasive plant species, and making biking and walking as easy as driving. So our overlay district would cover from 2nd Avenue down to 10th Street and Walnut Street. And as Jake said, we want to harken back to the era of innovation that used to be along the street with lights, but we want to make it energy efficient lights. So our first part of that would be have energy efficient lighting for city controlled and privately controlled outdoor lighting, meet energy efficiency by industry standards. So moving forward with that, it could be LED or whatever better technology comes along. For landscaped, we like the idea of that 50% native plant species. You would also have to have a requirement that landscaped areas are designed to filter water. This would decrease water runoff, and have the utilization of water collection systems to decrease the amount of water that the city has to use to water landscaped areas. For a variety of transportation, we looked at bicycle and pedestrian and electric and hybrid vehicles. For bicycle, we say that there's got to be a bicycle lane along this corridor and have a great number of bicycle racks and a program in place to add more of those racks upon the request of citizenship. For pedestrians, the City Council can have the option to make certain areas along the street a pedestrian mall from certain times of the day and certain seasons. We get more people out on the street. For an electric and hybrid motor vehicle, it would have a requirement that 10% of the parking spots along the street would be designated only for electric and hybrid vehicles and have the inclusion of charging stations, similar to the ones that are outside the Franklin Public Library, which this is an image of. We also want to limit building use and have a requirement that on street level facing the street, you have only retail and restaurant use. The City Council could have a waiver of variance for different types of industry that they might find important along the street, but concentrating getting retail or restaurant, which will get people down into that street and making it unique from other areas of downtown. As Jake said, for sidewalk cafes, we looked at the permit requirement and how to pay for that yearly rental fee. So we want to streamline that process and get rid of the rental fee and have just a small processing fee for getting a permit. This will encourage restaurants to want to get to go on that street and get more economic incentive to go to that street. For going green, we have a couple different ideas. Have an incentivization for or a tax abatement for getting developers to build to certification standards that are sustainable, such as the Living Building Challenge or LEED certification. And since Living Building Challenge is a lot more stringent, you would have a better tax abatement for that. Next, we're kind of interested in having a requirement that 1% of a building or renovation cost would be needed to fund a sustainable building project along Walnut Street. This could include an art installation or an urban garden, or really up to a developer to just sort of come up with some sort of sustainable project. We also wanted to thank the Downtown Community Alliance for permission to use their images from their upcoming proposal and some of the things we talked about. So with that, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions of these presentations, either this one or any of the others?
Mr. Mayor?
Yep.
The question was asked earlier by Chris about how will the city incorporate it, but there are a couple of these projects, the one on water, which I think should go to Waterworks, the Walnut Street Transit Mall, which should go to Downtown Community Alliance. So will there be presentations or outreach to those groups as well?
Yes, and in fact, we've been working closely with those groups throughout the last 4 months. In addition to that, the collaboration continues to build with the Greater Des Moines Partnership in that we have now created a fellowship position, which this fellow is a part-time position. It's a student at the law school. That person is taking these initiatives from the prior years right now and developing them into full-blown proposals. And in fact, Councilmember, you had mentioned MAC earlier. We'll be appearing before MAC with 3 of the proposals from last year that we've run through the fellowship process on May 14th. And so to answer your question, yes, but we are always open and willing for support to get into those organizations and to continue to push these forward. So any way in which you have thoughts on how to do that are most welcome.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent. The mayor stayed for your presentations, but he's making an introduction of a group that's in town, and he wanted me to express his appreciation to you and compliment you for the great work that you've undertaken. Do you graduate right now? Are you?
Some of them.
Some of you?
They got 2 weeks of finals, so.
2 weeks of finals, then a bar exam.
Right. Been there and done that.
Yeah. Best.
But everybody did a great job. It was wonderful.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Congratulations.
May I just also just thank you all for taking the time, and city manager and city attorney, thank you for your time in this class and in opening up your office. City manager particularly, I saw Mike Ludwig was here, who has helped throughout the process this year and also previous years, as well as Phil Delafield, who I also saw at one point. They've been very helpful, and city attorney, as always, has been most helpful in this year and in years in past. So thank you all for your support.
Thank you. Congratulations.
I might comment on those who are presented on the food and the quality of food and the voucher program, that Aging Resources has a program there that they use for those who qualify for the vouchers to be used at the downtown market. So they have got some efforts in that area to help those people. So it's a good program.
Well, thank you. Is there any other comments on this? The mayor stepped out. He asked me to make sure that we got to our next order of business, which is the legislative update. Mr. Lester.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. I have for you as always, exciting legislative update. You'll note that, and I'll keep it very brief, you'll note that the length of the update is getting much shorter, but the import of what the update's talking about is getting much greater. Just real briefly to run through what's on there, the commercial property tax reform bill is now in conference committee. Met 3 times last week. They selected their chairs and came up with some guiding principles, and other than that, they really didn't accomplish a great deal. At the end, the Senate Democrats floated a compromise that would include their tax credit plan as well as a telecom rollback, assuming that the city would receive a backfill on the rollback, and capping the growth at 3% versus the proposed House proposal of 2% versus the current law of 4%. And the latest that we understand is that there's been no Republican response to that offer. The standings bill has been passed. The good news is that the Senate version was amended on the floor to include a $9.6 million funding for the 411 pension system. However, and that did pass the Senate, but unfortunately the House removed that appropriation. So that bill is headed for conference committee as well. There was an urban renewal bill. Scott Sanders and I attended, as did a number of other city representatives and the League of Cities last week. This is similar to all of the TIF quote-unquote reforms that have been proposed the last several years. There does not seem to be a very broad base of support. It's being driven by some taxpayers from Coralville who are extremely unhappy with TIF used in their city. We'll continue to monitor that and attend additional subcommittees. It did not pass out of the subcommittee, but there is still another subcommittee that's expected this week, and so we'll continue to monitor that and let council know where we're at with that. And then I did also want to reference, it's not on the handout, but the hotel motel sales tax reinvestment district bill. That's not on your sheet. We've had significant impact and participation on that bill. In fact, Roger Brown from my office worked on that bill all weekend in terms of review and analysis and maybe making some suggested changes that we think would improve the bill, and we'll keep you posted on the development with that bill as well. And that's all I have.
Is the use of that sales tax identified as any specific use?
Yes, it's very limited in terms of the sales taxes that can be used, and it's also directed project-specific in terms of the uses.
Thank you very much. It may be before we meet next that the legislature adjourns, and I think I probably speak for the rest of the council. It would be nice to have kind of a summary of what did pass that benefits or should, be on the minds of council members. Even some of the things we haven't spent a lot of time on because they're not kind of our A priority. So sometime after adjournment, a little recap. Thank you very much. Is there anything else on the legislative agenda? Let's turn it over to the public.
Looks like staff.
They're public. No other comments? I'm going to, for the mayor, adjourn this workshop. Thank you very much for coming. Have a good day. We will be back here for our council meetings, but remember we have a closed session meeting at 3:30, and I will be coming in barely by 3:30. That means I won't be here at 3:30.
We know you're...